Sicilian writer Andrea Camilleri created the memorable police inspector Silvio Montalbano. He sold millions of copies of his novels, and his stories were turned into a TV series which was shown in many different countries. But all this success came relatively late in life. Signor Camilleri was in his late 60s before his first best-selling book was published. I asked John Hooper, The Economist's Italy correspondent, what Andrea Camilleri did before he became an author.
He was expelled from one school, he dropped out of university, and he eventually found his niche in cinema and in television. And he worked for many years teaching directing at the Centre for Experimental Cinema in Rome, always pushing up the boundaries. He was an innovator by nature, and one of the things that he did was to do a detective series involving a woman detective who was an expert in the martial arts. And this was in 1960s Italy, which was quite an adventurous thing to be doing.
Did he write any books before his 60s?
He did. He wrote a novel when he was quite young, and that had, let us say, limited success. He gave up, and it was only after he retired from his life of teaching and directing that he decided to give it another try.
And that was when the Inspector Montalbano novels took off. Speaking through an interpreter, Andrea Camilleri explained where the name of his detective came from.
I saw the form of the thriller as a cage that does not allow you to escape from the consequences of space and time. At that time, I happened to read a novel by Vasquez Montalban. So my police and commissioner, who until then had no name, I just called him the commissioner, I gave the name Montalbano in gratitude to Montalban.
What was it about that character, do you think, that struck a chord with so many millions of readers?
He just got through to people, I think, partly as an upholder of the law in an island where the mafia has often been depicted as just running amok and doing whatever it likes. And that was actually an aspect of the detective which was very dear to Camilleri himself.
Montalbano felt momentarily demoralized. How could it be that things never changed? Mutatis mutandis, one always ended up caught in dangerous webs of relations, collusions between the mafia and politicians, the mafia and entrepreneurs, politicians and banks, money launderers and loan sharks. What an obscene valley. What a petrified forest of corruption, fraud, rackets, villainy, business. How would Papa Dante put it? Ah, servile Italy, you are sorrow's hostel, a ship without helmsman in terrible storms. Lady not of the provinces, but of a brothel. Italy was still servile, obeying at least two masters, America and the Church. And the storms had become a daily occurrence, thanks to a helmsman whom she would have been better off without.
In one of his last interviews, he criticised writers who made the figures emerging from the world of organised crime their anti-heroes, because he said that in a sense made the public sympathise with them, whereas in his case he was putting the sympathies and how of his readers on the side of law and order.
Was the setting important to its international success, do you think?
I think so, yes. I think that it brought out the beauty of Sicily, the lifestyle that the detective had. Even though it was relatively modest, he had a house that looked out onto the sea, he enjoyed his food, and he operated in these beautiful towns that you find particularly in the southeast of Sicily, with their gorgeous Baroque architecture. And I think that all of that proved captivating.
And he was obviously galvanised by his success because he became extraordinarily prolific. How many books did he turn out in all?
Quite astonishingly so. He must be pushing 100. There have been years in which 8 books in a year have appeared under his name. So it really was a quite staggering achievement.
The soldier who fights the battle does not know what's the strategy of the Supreme Command, but a writer must know the strategy of his novel. And humor and irony are part of my strategy.
L'ironia, l'umorismo mi servono e poi.
All of his books were written to a format. They all had 18 chapters and they ran to 180 pages. He didn't vary from that.
What is his reputation in Italy? Is he much loved?
Yes, very much so. I can't think of anybody who bears comparison. I think that a lot of Italians felt that he introduced them to his island, to Sicily, and I think that they felt that he integrated a part of the country with the rest in a way that has not been done before. So yes, he was much loved.
John Hooper on Andrea Camilleri, who's died aged 93. Now, Johnny Clay